and welcome to the Empower Hour, my friends. Back at you after a week off. We had to figure out a few little hacks to get around um, Facebook's new policy of not having third-party platforms attached to their system. But we found a hack around it, so we are back with the Empower Hour. Today, we're going to be talking about overcoming fear. This is a big one. As people try to move forward with their lives, a lot of times people don't understand just how much fear is embedded into their subconscious mind. And because of this fear, a lot of times we are frustrated that we're not getting where we want to get in life. We find ourselves caving into things. We find ourselves not living to the fullness of our potential. And that is frustrating when you know that you have more in you, when you are aware of the potential you have inside, but you aren't reaching it. And a lot of times that's because of fear. They say that we operate to the level of our self belief, not the level of our potential. So if our self belief is lower than our potential, then we'll never reach our potential. Our potential becomes irrelevant. So we want to address this fear. And so much fear has been programmed into our subconscious mind by the Jehovah Witness religion. It's a fear based religion. They really control their members through fear. From the time you're a little kid, there's fear. I say it's tantamount to child abuse to make children look at those images that we had to look at when we were kids and we had the youth book or the whatever books they had. I mean, not even that. I mean, all the books that we had to read that the adults were reading, and or the Watchtower magazines where we saw fire coming from heaven and people on the ground just scratching and clawing for their lives. That's why so many of us still have fear of Armageddon, even though you consciously don't believe the religion. There's still a fear that's embedded in you because of all those images of death and gloom and God destroying the earth. So many of us are incapacitated from living the fullest of our potential because of this embedded fear. And we're going to go through some things that this affects in your life because you cannot thrive with fear. What you need to achieve your dreams and achieve the things that you want in life is courage. Everything you want is found on the other side of courage, not fear. Fear stands for false evidence appearing real, or false expectation appearing real, where we're taking something that was imagined and we're throwing it in front of us as if it was real, and then we're stepping into the realness of that reality that we are programmed to believe. It's not that it's really real, we're creating it. We're not giving ourselves a chance because we come from a place so programmed with fear. When I was a kid, when I was about 13 years old, I woke up about must have been about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and my whole room was orange, and I didn't know what was going on. And I heard people screaming and yelling, and I looked out the window, and there was a big tree behind my room and a carport, and all the sky that I could see was orange, and I just heard people yelling, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's Armageddon!" And I got on my knees and I was praying to Jehovah to spare my life. I thought it was Armageddon. We were so programmed that the end was right around the corner. The end, I was never going to graduate from high school. I'm on my knees. I'm thinking of all the bad things that I've done or little secret things that I was holding. And I'm crying. I'm shaking because it's that day. Armageddon is here. And what it was is that 2 houses away, not the house next to me, but the house after that, was on fire. Giant fire burned the house down. And that's what it was. But you see how my mind went straight there? 13 years old, I'm a kid. I'm so programmed with fear. I'm crying. I think it's the end of my life and that this loving God is going to destroy me. Gosh, that's horrible to be programmed with that level of fear. So let's go through some things that fear keeps you limited by. Where fear affects you, that's a better way to say it. Where fear may affect you to this day because of the programming from being a Jehovah Witness. Remember, fear will always tell you that you can't do something, that you can't, that something's impossible, that it's not for you, that you don't have the ability. Fear keeps you in doubt. And when you want something in your life and you are holding doubt, doubt leaves the back door open. So when the going gets tough, you take that back door and you never fulfill what it is you say that you want. Fear tells you you can't. So look back at your childhood if you were raised a witness, and how many times were told you can't, that it's not for you, that you just can't do something. That's a story. Remember, whatever you tell yourself, you're correct about. Or if you tell yourself that you can't, you can't. You're a walking self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell yourself that you can, you will. What story do you tell yourself? I mean, you're the prophet of your own life based on the story that you tell yourself. But when you heard you can't so much in early life, it's so easy to fall into that. So instead of saying you can't, say you can. You can. You are able. If there's something you can't do, just tell yourself that you're going to learn how to do it. If you can't swim, don't fear water. Learn how to swim. Stop living in fear. Fear is the kryptonite of your life. False expectation, false evidence appearing real. Fear is like kryptonite, it cripples your life. If you can't do something, figure out a way that you're going to do it. Like I said, if you can't swim, don't live with that story. Go learn to swim. Lose your fear of water. If you fear flying, get on a flight. You'll understand that it's safer to fly than it is to drive. We tell ourselves these crazy stories. It's far more dangerous to get in your car and get on the highway than it is to get in an airplane, but we have fear. So sometimes we got to push through our fear to see who we are on the other side of that fear. We were programmed with you can't type of thinking, along with being programmed with that I can't kind of thinking. We were also programmed to get comfortable with the word no. How much did we hear no as children, as Jehovah Witnesses? I didn't even ask things, I knew the answer. You wanted to play sports? No. You wanted to go to the high school dance? No. You wanted to go to the prom? No. You wanted to join some club at school? No. You wanted to join the sleepover of a classmate? No. I mean, you got comfortable with the word no. No, 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 all over the place. So you're comfortable with telling yourself no today. It's so easy to say no. Even when things are good for you, you find a reason not to do it. So you get stuck where you're at and you never progress and you never grow because you're so comfortable with no. And the word no keeps you in your comfort zone. Comfort zone doesn't mean it's all that comfortable. The comfort zone just means it's what you're used to. So you might not like your life at all. Your life might be very uncomfortable to be where you're at, but you might be accustomed to being uncomfortable in that uncomfortable place. You might not have enough money in your life. It's not comfortable, but you're accustomed to it. See, you cannot progress in life if you do not make your ceiling your new floor. This is your comfort zone. This is your ceiling. This is your floor, right? What you want in life is here. This ceiling has to become your new floor. You've got to raise your comfort zone. Remember, everything you want in life is outside your comfort zone. If it was within your comfort zone, you'd already have what you want. See, you have the things within your comfort zone. The things that you want in your life are outside of your comfort zone, which means you have to stretch. And again, witnesses don't do that. Everything's the same. You know what to expect. Everything is in this box, this comfortable box. Everything is accepted by your community. If you stretch outside of what your community is doing, you're criticized as a witness. If you have a business and you become too successful, you're criticized. You're called materialistic. Everybody's supposed to stay in this box, this comfort zone. Everything you want is outside your comfort zone. Remember that. When you go to the gym, your muscles won't grow if you just stay within your comfort zone. Your muscles won't grow if you put the weight down as soon as it gets heavy. No, you've got to push your muscle beyond what it wants to do. Then your muscle will adjust to what you're asking it to do. It gets bigger. The same thing with everything else in your life. What you want is outside your comfort zone. If you want a brand new fit body, you're going to have to do uncomfortable things. And as witnesses, it was all about being in this comfortable box where everybody told the same story, everybody did the same things, and we got used to it. It became our comfort zone. So once you leave the witnesses, you've got to keep stretching. You got to keep comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's got to be your new norm, where you're willing to stretch yourself, because stretching yourself, that's where you learn new things. That's where you grow, is when you stretch yourself. But a lot of times we don't want to take risks. Fear keeps us from taking risks. And everything we want in life, there's a risk to. If you're a fella, you want to ask that girl out, or you're interested in somebody, you take a risk of being rejected. If you want to get a promotion, or get a new job, or apply for something, there's a risk that you won't be accepted. There's always a risk, but you won't get very far without taking risk in life. But as a witness, you were always taught to play it safe. You were afraid to get in trouble. You were afraid to let people down. Life was about how you appeared, not about who you really were, how you appeared. Fear looks for approval. Going along with being concerned about how you appear, fear wants to be approved. Fear cares about what others think. You will never get very far if you live your life based on the approval of other people. Fear looks for validation from other people. Fear questions itself. Fear cannot stand on its own. It must be petted and rubbed on by other people, made to feel good. Looks for approval because it can't stand on its own 2 feet. One reason why a person who lives in fear is adverse to taking risks is because fear exaggerates the negative. When you were a witness, how much did they really key on the negative? You may stumble somebody. Not that it will happen. You may. Well, you can't live life like that. I remember I was going to throw a party. I did throw a party, a black tie party when I was a witness. And it was for couples. It wasn't for kids, it was for couples. I wanted the women to get dressed up and feel real good about themselves, and the husband to shine up the car and buy his wife a bouquet. And I threw this classy party at the Marriott Hotel. And it was called A Night to Remember. And I remember the circuit overseer came and tried to discourage me from doing it. Rodney, what if the single people get a room and end up having sex? And what if he brought up all these crazy scenarios, none of which happened? Like, you're not supposed to enjoy your life because you fear these people are going to hook up anyway. If that's what they're going to do, they don't need my party to do it. And I remember that. He went in on me. He tried to discourage the whole circuit from going to my party. He actually brought it up at the district in the circuit assembly. He kind of alluded to my party because he knew everybody got invites, and I got all these RSVPs saying no, and it made me more determined to do the party, and we had a great time. Fear. Not supposed to have any fun. How many of you got married to somebody you didn't even know because you feared getting in trouble? You didn't even take the time to get to know the person. You met them, and 6 months later, you're married, and you're 19 years old. That's a story of so many witnesses because of fear. Everything was fear. It maximizes the negative and it minimizes the positive. What's the positive thing that could have came out of it? What's the positive thing of when you're a youth using your gifts and talents and getting the confidence that comes with that? There's so much confidence that comes when you put a child in an area of their gifts and talents. They believe in themselves. They succeed. They know what it's like to win. They know what it's like to be good. But we minimize that and we place all the attention on the negative, what to fear. Fear keeps us in the status quo. Fear keeps a person from not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to change their life. You just get used to the status quo. And that's witnesses. That's why witnesses, and I say this all the time, they're the same person at 80 that they were at 40. They don't change at all. The exact same person. No wisdom is being added. You like to say that with age comes wisdom, but so many times age comes all by itself. You're exactly the same person, you're just older, and that's witnesses. Fear tends to replay the past. It replays the part of your life that you don't like. This is something we have to be very careful of with having the past that we have, where we're replaying and replaying and replaying the things that we don't like. To create a successful life, we must have a vision for the future, a vision for where we're going. We have to turn on that natural GPS system by knowing where we're at and knowing where we're going. See, when we know where we're at and we know where we're going, have a vision that even if we get off track, the GPS puts us back on track. It reroutes us. But if we have fear in the mix, it won't do that. If we keep looking backwards, our GPS will keep taking us to where we were yesterday. And it'll take us back to where we are today. Back to where we were yesterday. You're just in this loop. You never move. You never grow. You stay the same person. No, we must leave the past where it is and have a vision for the future. Fear is terrified of failure. And when you're terrified of failure, you don't do anything. When you're terrified of failure, you have an idea for a business, but you don't start that business. When you're terrified of failure, you have a person you might want to meet, you might want to get to know in a romantic way, and you never pull the trigger. Fear keeps you exactly where you are. It is terrified of failure. You see, when you fail in life, that is your biggest teacher. When you fail, you learn. When you're afraid to fail, you don't even swing the bat. Imagine a baseball player who got up to the plate and just would not swing the bat because he's afraid of striking out. Guess what? He's going to strike out anyway. He's going to strike out whatever without even attempting to swing the bat. And that's the worst thing. Swing the bat. You might get lucky and hit that ball. You might get lucky and hit a home run. But if not, you'll keep learning. You'll keep learning the pitches. You'll keep learning what a fastball looks like, what a slider looks like. You're learning how that pitcher's pitching the ball, and you'll get better and better at making contact with that ball. So you have to learn through your mistakes. As Jehovah's Witnesses, you were punished for your mistakes. There was never any lessons. You were just punished. Do not fear failure. It's your greatest teacher. You will learn more from where you failed than where you succeeded. Failure is your greatest teacher, so adjust your relationship with failure. When I start a new venture, I want to fail fast. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give it to me. I want to get through this. I want to fail forward. So in life, remember, failing is okay, but always fail forward so that even through the failure, you're further there, you're further than where you were than when you fell. If you fall forward, you actually made progress from where you were when you stumbled. You fell forward. You fell forward because when you stand up, you got the lesson, which means you are further ahead than where you were in the first place. So don't fear failure. When we fear, we shrink when we're challenged. When we fear, we draw back. When we're courageous, we know that through the challenge, on the other side of a challenge, is a bigger, better version of us. That a caterpillar cannot become a butterfly unless it's challenged in that cocoon process. Then it becomes something bigger than it ever was. So don't shrink back when challenged. Don't shrink back when people challenge you. People will always challenge you when you're attempting to do something that they did not have the courage to do. They will challenge you when they won't understand or they don't understand your path. Don't shrink back from the challenge. Fear always follows, fear never leads. All of you are leaders in your own way because you had the courage to step away from a religion of followers. You had the courage to walk your own path. That's huge. Fear doesn't want to lead. Fear wants to follow. Fear doesn't want to stand out. Fear wants to be buried in the crowd. So, good discussion. Let's bring our panel up. We got a small panel today. We have Christine, Gary, and Dean. All right. So, since we got a small panel, let's make this nice and interactive. So, who wants cheers?
Yeah, you said me. Oh, okay. Yeah, you dropped out for a second there. Yeah, I was thinking about. Well, I'm a musician, and I know that I'm a pretty darn good musician. Got great natural ability, but I also know I have limitations. So we all do. Not everybody can play a classical piece. So, but I was always confident that I'll go up there on stage and play with anybody. I don't care if I know the song or not because it's just rock, it's just blues, it's whatever it is. It's a piece of cake. No problem. Super super confident. So about 2 years, well, I don't know, a little under 2 years ago, I moved to England for about a year, and I'm just telling the story because this is how fear can be subtle, and we don't even realize it's fear. And I go to a jazz jam in a town called Woking, and the guy that runs the jam, who's a really well-known musician, has played with Sting and everybody. He asked me, "So what do you play?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I play guitar and I do a little bit of jazz, but really I mainly do." Well, right there is the fear already. I'm just saying, yeah, I could do a little jazz, but I really just know a couple of tunes. And then he wants to know what songs I tell him, and he's like, he's not impressed. So I'm already kind of like relegating myself to the bottom of the heap by saying like, yeah, I'm probably better off just playing blues and stuff like that. So what happens is he relegates me to the bottom of the heap, and I'm just playing with people that are at different levels. Sometimes it works nice, sometimes it's horrible, and I got really sick of it. And but I was just so scared about getting up there and taking a chance and playing what I probably can do, if not perfectly, pretty well. So eventually, the point is that I eventually, because Wayne Shorter died, and I wanted to do a tribute to him. He's one of my favorite musicians, and I said I got to do this. And I talked to one of the young guitarists. He's like less than half my age, just in his 20s. And I'm talking to him, and he says, "Well, it sounds like you could use a guitar lesson." And I'm thinking, I've never taken a guitar lesson ever. I took piano lessons when I was a kid, but never. I said, yeah, that's cool. So he became my teacher. I paid him 30 pounds, whatever it was. And he taught me some basic things that I kind of knew but didn't know. And the next thing you know, I'm on the stage and I'm playing and I'm holding my own. I wasn't the best guitarist in the room, but I had a great time. And ever since then, I moved to North Carolina. I go to jazz jams, I go to blues jams, I go to open mics. So the point is that fear can be really subtle. Um, it was telling me that something that I'm very, very good at, I'm actually not good enough because I'm in a room with a bunch of jazz people. What is that? What do you call that? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I mean, I guess the point is that we just sort of have to like, get our toes wet sometimes and just jump in and maybe do a little preparation. Like I took a guitar lesson for the first time ever from a kid that was less than half my age, almost a third my age. And I just did it, and I'm really, really happy I did. Now I'm still not the greatest jazz musician in the room ever, but I do it. If I have the chart, I'll do it. So it's and just as a kind of end to the story, I am convinced that the um, neuroplasticity that creates, that being adventurous mentally and opening your mind to new things and practicing them and experiencing them, I'm convinced that it creates, well, science does prove this, that creates new neural pathways in our brains. And right around that time, I started remembering things because I had a certain amount of trouble with my memory and actually thinking maybe I was going crazy because of an experience I had a couple of years ago. And all of a sudden, things started coming back to me. It's like, oh, now I remember what happened. So it was life changing for me, absolutely life changing for me to get over that subtle fear of something that I'm actually quite good at, but I didn't feel I was good enough.
Yeah, the story we tell ourselves, right? And here's the thing. One of the things that can help us, that can hold us back, I should say, is comparing ourselves to others, right? You know you're a good musician. When you're a good musician, you're never going to embarrass yourself, right? I mean, I can hold a note, I can sing. Would I call myself a great singer? No, but I'll never embarrass myself, right? Because I know I'm not a bad singer, right? So, when you have a gift, it's a gift, and remember, a gift is something you're given. When we get ourselves out of the way, you get the story of who you are out of the way. The more that gift is pours through you, right? So even if maybe some people were trained and spent more time doing something, honing something, and they're great at it. But if it's a gift and you're good at it, you're good at it. Period. Never anything to fear if you feel something is a gift. So if music is a gift, it just is. Of course, there's somebody better. There's always somebody better, right? So, and that's why it's not, especially when you're dealing with art. Art is art. Who's the judge? You ever go to a art gallery and you look at a piece and you're like, oh my God, that looks like a 5-year-old did that, right? But maybe I just don't have the appreciation for that piece of art, and somebody comes behind me and pays 15 grand for that. So obviously it's art, right? And just to know that we are creators, and we are all artists in our own way, whether it's cooking or gardening or painting or dancing or architecture. We are all artists in our own way, and we honor ourselves, and we don't judge, and we just honor the gifts that we're given, knowing that there's a difference between confidence and conceit. It's not the same thing. Like, I like the fact that you got on there and said, you know what, I'm a good musician. You owned it, and I love that.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think all of us should do that. Whatever our gifts are, own it. You don't need to play small and play this fake humility. That's another thing. I think we have
Yeah.
the wrong definition of humility. Silly things that we come up with.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's interesting about, just because we got have a little extra context, I'll throw this in, is that what I was also doing was I was over idolizing this fellow. His name is Carl, the guy that ran the thing, that played with Sting and Jeff Beck and all these people. Um, I had an unrealistic. He's very, very good. Certainly better than me. There's not, like you said, there's nothing wrong with admitting that. But I had this over idealized concept of him, thinking that he's just too good to even share the stage. And the more I got to know him and this other fellow Nick, who toured with Jeff Beck, and these guys are great musicians. The more I got to know them, sitting in the pubs just chatting for an hour or two, you start to see that they have insecurities, they have limitations. This fellow Carl told me how about he had a miserable personality. He was incredibly negative to the point where he ruined all his relationships. But then he got into Buddhism, and that helped him. So that's the other thing we do when we lower ourselves, we're elevating somebody else probably. And it's fine if they really have achieved something great. If you're Hank Aaron, you're the home run king. Okay, great. But they have limitations and faults and insecurities too. And so we're not alone is the point.
I'm glad you said that, because it's so easy, especially in the time of social media, to compare your lives to people. You know, I had a friend, and she would get depressed on social media, feeling like everybody else was living such a great life. And her life is damn good. Like, look at you. I mean, she doesn't age. She looks amazing. She had a nice big house, wonderful kids. I mean, are you looking at your life? Right? But she's not. We have a tendency to really downplay our own lives and play up other people. And that's why there's no comparison. I mean, if everyone chooses to show the sunny side of their lives, which people do on social media, I do it. I don't share my misery. I share the good parts, right? I mean, but
Mhm.
listen, we all have both, right? And when we're comparing our lives and comparing things, it's never going to be enough because there's always someone else, right? I'll give you an example. I'm 5'11". Now, if that's a very average height, right? In fact, it's 2 inches over average. Average man is 5'9". If I were to only look at basketball players and compare myself to basketball players, I'd feel like a this tall,
Mhm.
right? If
Yeah.
I only looked at basketball players, or if I just had this idea in my head where I just wanted to be, 6'3", and and I just focus on me not being over 6 foot. I'm 5'11". I just missed it. Now, here's the truth of the matter: 12% of men are over 6 foot tall.
Hmm.
That's the truth. But if you only focus on that, that's all you're going to see. That's all you're going to see. Right. So there's no comparison. Better to look at our gifts and where we're gifted, what's right about our lives, right? And get rid of that fear of not being enough. And that's the big fear, is not being enough in whatever way. Okay. Next year. Go ahead, Dean.
Can't hear you.
Oh, your volume.
Yeah. I also think it's just the power of association, where you have, if you've got people that believe in you around you, because in your own self-talk in your head, I think generally, well, okay, let me speak for myself, let me not generalize everybody else, but your self-talk is kind of you looking at all the things that could go wrong, and you sort of saying, well, it's not going to work and not this. And it's so interesting when I remember years ago, I'd been through a really, really bad patch business-wise and personally and everything else. Life was falling apart. And I started going out with somebody who I used to actually get embarrassed the way she used to speak about me to other people. I mean, I used to go like, like, calm down, like, I'm not that good. And the amazing thing was that it fed so much into who I was as a person that I started becoming very successful. And because it's almost like in my head, I didn't even think about the fears anymore. And as you were talking earlier, when we were all in the quiet room, I was just actually thinking about that whole sort of that thing that often happened when we were in, where if you spoke, if you were speaking, somebody said, you know what, I see so and so is like having a rough time, and I've got something that could maybe help him, and it would be like everybody would put limits on everybody else. It would be, well, I'm trying to remember the exact words, but don't you think it would burden them down if you told them to do something more? Maybe they're doing all that they can do, and so everybody sort of set limits on how high they could achieve. So it was, and those the achievement levels were always as low as possible. So nobody was ever stretching beyond that. Would it be kind to offer somebody else a better job that they've got at the moment? And then everybody would hold back and go, well, no, probably they wouldn't be able to cope with a better job. Rather let them be poor. That sort of, there was this poor mentality that I experienced, particularly myself. And and that sort of started setting the limits more on yourself, that you said, well, I only deserve this kind of income. I don't deserve a bigger income. I only deserve just enough. What's the sustenance and covering? I deserve just sustenance and covering. And so you set that bar very, very low on what you're prepared to achieve. And because you're waiting for something better to come in the future. So I think that's maybe where part of the fear comes from as well.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to not fear what other people think. That's one
Yeah.
of the biggest ones, is just the fear of other people. And it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what somebody else thinks about your life, right? To live a life trying to satisfy other people. And again, as a witness, that's such a big part of the religion, is satisfying other people. They're judging you as being spiritually strong, spiritually weak. I remember when I thought it was wrong to buy a 2-seater car.
Actually, you can't use it for the ministry.
You know what? My first car was a 65 Mustang, right? I'm supposed to like not buy this 65 Mustang because it was a two-seater, you know, because of field service or whatever, right? It's all other people. What do I want? What do I want to drive? You know, how do I want to dress? How do I want to, you know, go about my life? You know, I remember just the fear of saying the wrong thing. I'll give an example. I was 17 years old and I had a part on the circuit assembly. And we were doing rehearsals in the schools here. You know, I was going to ask me this question. You know, what fine work do you plan to do after graduation, Rodney? Because it was my senior year, and I wasn't sure. So they elected me to pioneer. I was a pioneer. My older brother was a pioneer, and the closer I got to graduation, the more I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I said, oh, could you not ask me questions? Could you ask me another question? Because I haven't figured that. And he said, then when I'm on the stage, guess what he asked me? What fine work do you plan to do after graduation, Rodney? Asked me the very question I asked him not to ask. And just to play along with the program, I said I was going to pioneer. Because what am I supposed to say? I want to find a full-time job. Well, I don't want to blow the show. So I say it, right? You know, and my God, I was so upset. I got in my car and I just left. I was so upset because now everybody was congratulating me after I got off, you know, and, you know, oh my God, it's great news. And at that moment, I knew I wasn't going to pioneer. When I came out of my mouth, I knew this is not what I'm going to do. But you see how they placed that fear. I didn't want to let these people down either. I felt so trapped between a rock and a hard place because it was all about appearance and what these people thought. You know, if I was in integrity with myself, I should have just said my truth right on that stage. And if it was me today, I would say my truth right on that stage because I'm at a point in my life where I don't live my life based on making other people happy, right? And for all of you watching, remember, be in integrity with yourself. And if people fall out of your life because you are in integrity with yourself, that person never really belonged there or doesn't belong there at this time in your life. You outgrow people, and that's okay. Okay.
And Rodney, just what you're saying is very true. I just want to add that I think that whole thing about many people fear of losing the people they've got around them, not knowing that there's a better group of people that they maybe were moving towards. Yeah. You hang on to your old friends, and you will never make that leap into your ideal life.
You make room, right? If you got a full glass of water and you want fresh water, you got to pour some out.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's not supposed to stay in your life forever, and that doesn't mean anybody's wrong. It just means that you're outgrowing the person, and we've got to be okay with letting people go. They might reappear again in the future, but be loyal to yourself first and foremost.
100%.
Next, Christine.
All right.
Hi. Thanks, everyone. So that acronym that you mentioned in the beginning of, false evidence appearing real for the word fear. Another one too is fear everything and run, or fear everything and rise. And you get to choose, which is really awesome. And so for me, when I have a fear moment, and it could be getting up to speak in front of a group, it could be going into a session, or even opening my email. I could, sometimes if a client was responding, I would have a fear of like, uh-oh, I did something wrong. And I had to, in that moment, make a decision. I can believe that if I want, or I get to choose, and I would reframe it to maybe they're telling me a really cool story, or they're sharing something with me, or sending me a referral, just something that would switch my mind out of that fear that I was having in the moment or before I'm to speak. And for me, I feel it's like I just make a decision. We get to choose. We can only hold one thought at a time. So you get to hold an empowered thought or a disempowering thought. But what's really awesome, and we've never been taught, is we get to choose. And so in that moment, I just choose like, no, this doesn't feel good. I don't want to hold on to this fear or make this decision out of fear. I choose to make it out of confidence or out of courage, and I move forward. And if something falls, through and doesn't work out the way I thought, then it's okay. I'll take the next road, or the next opportunity that comes through with that. So it's just like to be aware that fear is there. It has a purpose, to help us with discernment, to keep us out of danger, or events that could harm us. But if it's, I say, wobbly or your insecure feelings, then facts always overrule those.
Faith in you, right? Where you gotta believe in yourself. I'm gonna share a story. This is how I started my first business. I was 22 years old, and I worked for my dad. I'm the youngest of 3 sons. And the way my dad ran his business, that's like being under Prince Harry. I'm just never going to be king. I get the least amount of money and the worst schedule and the worst truck. Like I'm the last one, or midnight shift, whatever it was. I'm going to like never be able to get out of that position. So I had just gotten engaged, and I'm like, I don't make enough money. I was making like $10 an hour. This is a long time ago. I don't make enough money to be married. So I'm going to start my own business, doing what my dad did, but not, I lived in Hawaii, so I could go to another island and not compete with my dad. Okay. So faith, part of this is being young, but you want to keep the mindset of a young person, because they're reckless in a good way. I go to the island of Maui, and we used to pump out grease traps and stuff from restaurants. And I don't have a truck. I don't have a business. I have nothing. I take my best friend and my roommate. We make a bunch of flyers. I said, you go to Kihei and Wailea and Maui. You go to Kahului and Wailuku. I'm going to Lahaina. And you put these flyers on every single restaurant. It was called Suck 'em Up Pumping. We're going to pump out grease traps and oil from restaurants. Okay. I have no business. I have a P.O. box, and I have an answering service. This is back with the pagers. That's all I have. Okay. And then people started calling, wanting service. And this was probably about April or May. And I would call them back. My answering service would page me. I call the answering service. What's up? It's like 1990. I said, yeah, we can get you on the schedule. It'll be like September before we can work you in, because I don't have anything. I need the time to get a truck, and I don't have any money. And by September, I'd found this truck from the Army surplus. When I got married, the money that came from my wedding, I got married in early September. I used that to finish building this truck, and I sent it. It came late September. Like I said, I started serving these restaurants. Okay. And we took that business from, I think the first year we made $25,000 gross, and we took that to, at one point we were making about $110,000 a month. Right. That's how big the business got. Right. Because I just believed. Right. And everybody told me I was crazy. I mean, my brother tried to talk me out of it. What are you doing? Telling people you have a business that doesn't exist. Well, I believe what was in my mind. This was the vision. And my dad said, you got rose-colored glasses on, son. Just work for me. And I just ignored everybody. And in life, you have to do that. And I made a lot of mistakes. Don't get me wrong. I made a lot of mistakes. And later on, when people say, well, how do you know so much about X, Y, and Z? I go, because I did the opposite. I made the mistake. I jacked it all up, but I don't quit. And that's what I want for all of you is don't fear. Big dreams are on the other side of fear. Big dreams are on the other side of mistakes, sometimes massive mistakes, but you will learn, you will grow, you will succeed if you really believe in that vision in your head. Let's go to Jack.
I think fear is actually a really important part of it, because that's how courage is developed. But I remember when somebody told me that if you feel fear of doing something, that means most of the people feel the same fear as well. And if you overcome that fear, then you're going to be ahead of everybody else who gave it.
Mhm.
So think about it, right? Every time you feel fear and you feel like this is stopping me, it's stopping majority of people. You break free from that fear. You break through this fear. Then all your competition stays behind.
Right.
And that's what you did. I did the same thing. I remember I was completely broke. I worked for minimum wage. My wife got pregnant. She was working part-time as well. And I knew we had to move out of my in-laws basement because there was no space. It was just one room that we were renting. And I was not able to afford any apartment in Toronto. Like, I looked for the cheapest apartments. I couldn't find anything. And I talked to somebody and they said, well, you have to buy a house. I'm like, you don't understand. I cannot afford the cheapest apartment. But he walked me through the process and he says it is much cheaper to own a house than it is to rent an apartment. And I took that leap of faith and I had to build it from scratch, and I did it. I pulled it off. Everybody thought I was crazy, but I had that vision. I had that goal. I was like, yes, I can pull this off, even though everybody else thinks I'm nuts. And guess what? Later on, everybody's like, oh no, I will never do this. No, this is crazy. Oh no. And then a decade later, Jack, how did you do this?
Right.
we want to do this now, right? And today I'm teaching people how to do this, right? You can own your own property even if you are drowning in debt, because that's where I was, and I went through it myself, so I know how to do it. But you got to overcome the challenge, and I think even for a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, they think it's impossible to live without the organization. That it's just too difficult, too hard. There's enormous amount of fear of stepping outside of those boundaries. But those who did, now we know how much far ahead we are, how much we've grown, how much our life is so much better without it. But unless you overcome that fear, unless you step into that courage, you'll never have that life that you want.
Mm-hmm. Fear has its place. I mean, fear keeps us from doing a lot of stupid things, right? But when doubt and fear are combined, when it's doubt, when it's a fear that's keeping you from believing in yourself, that's the kind of fear that you want to be able to push through. I mean, it's natural. I mean, it's there. I'm not saying it's not there, but push through it. What we need to do is you need to accept the result as when you accept the result real before it is, you're tenacious. That's when you keep trying. That's when you don't quit, right? So if there's something in you that's a passion, something in you that's burning, so sometimes there are some things you need to let go. There's some things that aren't your calling, maybe it was a good idea, someone told you to do this. I mean, the worst thing is to waste more time doing something that you don't like. Some people go into a field that they don't really like just because their family. I'm a nurse because my mom was a nurse and her mom was a nurse, and maybe that's not in you, right? But when there's something in you, right? Gary loves playing music, obviously. So there should be no quit on that, none. When I first became a motivational speaker, I would drive from Vegas to LA to Scottsdale, Arizona, all over the place for 3 minutes on stage, 6 minutes on somebody's stage, right? Because that was the passion of mine. And sometimes you fail, sometimes you drive and they don't get you on stage. I mean, I've had all that kind of stuff happen to me, right? But when something, do not let fear and doubt keep it from you. Listen to that voice in you, right? Watching Jack, great example of starting from nothing and every reason to not try and to say, you know what, I'm going to do it. If somebody else did it, I can. If I learned what that person is doing and I do it, I should get a similar result. And remember, it's the journey that's sweet. Never be afraid of the journey. If I told any one of you that I got this great hike, right, this great waterfall on this hike, and I show you the picture of this beautiful waterfall, and then you get all set for the hike, you get some new shoes, you got your backpack with water. I mean, you're ready for this hike, right? And we start walking, and we're a quarter mile in. We're just on this kind of dirt paved road, and I go, there it is, right there. You're disappointed because you came for a hike. You came for the climb and getting tired and propelling down a rope and climbing up a rope and slipping and skinning your knee, and you came for all of that. And when you get to the waterfall, you're like, wow, this was so worth it. But if you get it too easy, you're disappointed. So it's the journey in going for what you love. And that's where you got to get through the fear, because it's the journey that you're going to remember. Even when I tell the story of these different businesses that I had, I will tell you more stories of the crazy bad stuff that happened, supposedly bad stuff. I will tell you more of those stories than the successes. When I look back and I laugh and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. I'm so glad in retrospect, because that's what builds you. So move past the fear and understand that those are going to be the most teachable moments in your life when you're going for what you love. But you have to decide on the result and accept that as truth, so that you keep going and you're persistent and you keep pushing toward what you want and not focused on where you were. And that's where most ex-witnesses are stuck. There's no room for the vision, because it's all about the misery behind. Anyone else? Gary?
Yeah, so that's fear comes from within sometimes. That's mainly what we're talking about, but that could also be put in us by other people. But the kind of fear that we were also talking about, which is used to manipulate us, that's what the organization did so craftily. We have to be careful, I think, to not continue to allow ourselves to be manipulated by that, by either being overly concerned with things going on in the organization, or because we're being shunned, and it's maybe relatives that are shunning us. So the thing is to not allow that to manipulate us. And when it comes to being manipulated, fear is the easiest emotion to control. It's really, really easy to make somebody fear something. It's so stinking easy. I was just reading something by that Charles Manson had said, and I don't remember the exact words, but he just said, you can get somebody to do whatever you want them to do if you just make them fear something. And then he gave several examples. If this doesn't work, try this. If that doesn't work, try this. But you can do it every time. Just make them afraid, and you got control of because then you make them hate, because fear leads to hatred. That's what racism is all about. So it's used as a manipulative tool. And just because we're out of the witnesses doesn't mean that there's nobody trying to manipulate us. If you look at like the way politicians work and how they control the population, the divide and conquer concept, and how people are doing that nowadays by shaming each other because this one didn't wear a mask, or because this one follows this politician, or whatever. And you look at the news. The news is all about fear and all about hatred. There's almost never anything positive in the news. So the thing to do is to continue to think critically. I'm not saying turn the news off, although I think it's a good idea to not watch the news. Honestly, it's never really that informative anyway. But the thing is just to think critically about things, and to if something is starting to cause anxiety, like, oh my God, what if they come over here and bomb us, or all kinds of crazy stuff, just realize that is fear. And there, like you said before, there are things that we should fear, because that's why kids don't cross the road in traffic, because they're afraid of what might happen. It's a good thing. But I just think it's really good to realize that fear is always going to be used to manipulate us, not just by the JWs. It's going to be by the politicians, by the news media, by people that we know, that we come in contact with at work. It's used a lot because it's the easiest thing to control. And once they got control of that emotion, they can make you hate something. And then the world is their oyster. They can make you do just about anything.
And remember, too, most things that we fear are the things that we give power to. Right. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've talked with people in the group who are like, oh my God, the elders are coming, or they want to meet with me, or, you're giving these people power. They have no power. There's zero power, right? But the power we give them. So remember, the power is in you. You get to choose, you get to dictate, you get to create your life. Life is but your creation. Take the power from others. They're not you. Don't let anybody dictate what you can and cannot do in life. They're not you. They should be focused on their own dreams. What people say about you has nothing to do with you. What people say about you and try to convince you of has everything to do with what they think about themselves. If they think they can't do something, they're going to try to tell you you can. If they've done it, they're going to tell you you can. Neither thing has to do with you. Okay, so try not to take it personally. And keep on keeping on, keep following your dreams, keep following your intuition, my friends. So, panel, thank you so much for your contributions. Any last shares from anybody? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Christine.
I was gonna say, yeah, a way to help move fears or something you can do somatically in the body is just put your hand anywhere in your body and come back into present and take a deep breath so that your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex can stay open. Otherwise, you'll be in survival brain. So the more you breathe and stay calm and present in the moment, knowing that anxiety is a fear of the future, there's some tiger that your body's tripped into, or depression is the past. And by being able to breathe, ground yourself by putting your hand on your body, and then I flow the emotions through. They usually last 90 seconds. And as whether you're moving emotion out of your body in the moment while you're sitting there or in a bath is really good. And whatever crap you don't want to hold on to anymore, again, make a decision, be like, you know what, I'm not doing that anymore, and let the heavy stuff just go down the drain, down that it's not attached to you, or you
I
don't have to
love
be in that energy.
As Christine says, just make a decision to let it go. I love it. Okay, my friends, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone watching, have a happy Sunday fun day. Go do something fun today, replenish your soul, and we will see you next week.